His organization is a blockchain payments and cross-border remittance company. He is one of the world's foremost blockchain experts. Has been invited to speak in many and different global forums, such as the United Nations, IMF, World Bank, FBI, Commonwealth, and Secretariat. His wealth and knowledge in blockchain has allowed him to be able to set precedents in this particular industry. Ladies and gentlemen, to discuss the role of blockchain and how it can be able to be leveraged in business and government, please give it a round of applause for Mr. Lorien Gamaroff, the CEO of Centbee.
Thank you so much. How are you doing?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here. And thank you for the organizers for inviting me and the sponsors for making this conference possible. I do have a presentation, so I'm just going to wait for the clicker and the slides to come up. Lorien Gamaroff, you should see it there. But first of all, I just want to say that I do speak at many, many conferences around the world. And to be honest, my favorite conferences are African conferences. It's the only conference where the whole delegation is going to stand up and dance. And so it's just so heartwarming and soulful to come speak at an African conference. So the title of this presentation is What's the True Value of Blockchain and the Crypto Diversion. So what I'm going to speak about today is probably going to make some of you uncomfortable. And really what I want to address is the three major issues that's holding back blockchain adoption. Now, of course, when we talk about blockchain adoption today, what do people talk about? Who's holding crypto? How many exchanges there are? What volume of transactions are going through exchanges and through trades, peer-to-peer and all that? And what's the price of crypto? That's really what people talk about when they talk about adoption today. You know, this whole conference is about the value that blockchain can bring to businesses and industries and consumers. And we've heard about how many potential use cases there are for blockchain in terms of supply chain or data integrity, voting. You know, there's just so many different use cases that people have been talking about for years. And yet we don't see any of that. All we see are crypto investors. And I put investors in quotes. So what I want to tackle now are the three major issues holding back true blockchain adoption. In other words, utility, use, all these wonderful things that we talk about. Why have they not happened yet? So to start off, I just want to give you some of my background. Now, you've heard a little bit about my background, but I've been involved in blockchain since 2011. And this has been my entire career focus, has been trying to drive blockchain adoption and awareness. So from the early days of Bitcoin, when Bitcoin first came on the scene, and I was so excited about Bitcoin because let me just tell you where I'm from. I'm South African. I was born in Zimbabwe, but I grew up in South Africa, which is where I still live with my wife and my 4 sons, three of them are now bigger than me. It's amazing how fast time can fly. And so for me, being somebody who was involved in payments, specifically around electricity and other software engineering projects, when I first heard about Bitcoin in 2011, I was so excited because one of the major issues was payments. And we've talked about here cross-border remittances being so expensive. But also, if you just look at M-Pesa today, and we heard this yesterday in one of the talks, that M-Pesa is the only thing that people have. It's not the best possible solution, but it's the only thing that works. And so people use it. But if you think about the fees that are involved with M-Pesa, you know, we talk about M-Pesa being a tool for financial inclusion, but it's not inclusive because the fees are still so high. And this was what was so exciting about Bitcoin when it first arrived on the scene. It was supposed to be this peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So this is now what I have been involved with for many, many years in trying to drive this. So this is just a bit of my CV. And if you go and Google my name, Lorien Gamaroff, and you go onto YouTube, you're going to see many of the talks and things that I've given at places like the United Nations. So now I've said to you, I'm going to tackle the three problems around blockchain adoption. Why do we not see a world today where we have all these wonderful use cases. And it's not about talent, as we know. There's plenty of technology talent out there, business talent, regulatory talent. What's the problem? So I'm going to tackle the first one. And this is when I talk about the crypto diversion, crypto versus blockchain. Now, you can see that there's two words in the title of this conference, the blockchain and crypto conference. So let's tackle those two. The third one, by the way, is regulation. And that's going to follow on from those first two. So the first thing is blockchain. When we talk about blockchain, it almost seems like we are saying one thing, blockchain. Like when we say internet. When we all talk about the internet, we know what we're talking about. We're talking about this internet protocol, TCP/IP, that enables businesses to be able to communicate and create apps where we can move information and we can do all this cool stuff like social media, video streaming, ride hailing, whatever it is. The internet is one thing. But when we talk about blockchain, we're not talking about one thing. Everybody here knows and probably has a favorite blockchain. There's Ethereum, there's BTC blockchain, there's Ripple, there's Cardano, there's Solana. There's so many different blockchains. So when we're all talking about blockchain, we're not talking about one thing. We're talking about a universe of things. And at the end of the day, what makes the internet work is that it is a stable protocol that businesses can trust to build and invest businesses on top of and apps. But there is no such thing as a stable blockchain protocol. Just remember, a protocol just means a set of rules on how information must travel. That's the internet protocol. And blockchain is just a protocol. It's just rules around how transactional information can flow across a network. So why do we have all these different blockchains? Every single one of these blockchains that exist out there have technical issues. They are slow, they are expensive, they are unstable, meaning that the people behind those blockchains are not thinking about it like the internet. Did you know that the internet protocol has not changed in 40 years? But the innovation has happened on top of the internet. The speed and the capabilities have all been built on top of the internet. But one of the important things around blockchain that people miss, it needs to evolve. It needs to change. We need to have new features and new capabilities. And it's just there's no stability. There's no assurance for the future. If I build a house on a foundation and that foundation can change, what's going to happen to my house? It's all going to become unstable. So a very critical thing around blockchain that's holding all this adoption back is that people don't have a protocol mindset. They think that this is about innovation. You create a blockchain and you change it and you change it and you change it and you change it. That's not going to be how you create stability and assurance to entrepreneurs and investors. But another important thing around blockchain is scalability. When it comes to blockchain, if any of you have ever used Ethereum or any of these blockchains, what's the biggest, most important problem that you have? Cost. When it comes to actually creating a smart contract on Ethereum, sure, you've got Solidity and you can create smart contracts and all that, but what's going to hold you back? The fees, the incredible cost that it takes to actually run those blockchains. And of course, biggest problem. There was a talk yesterday from Mr. Ray Youssef, No One's founder. He epitomizes this ideology around crypto. What is that? Well, he spoke about a lot of things yesterday, a lot of truth. The financial system is broken. It doesn't seem equitable. It doesn't seem fair. We need to fix the financial system. We all agree with that, right? It's expensive. There's a problem with it. But when you have this crypto mindset, which is what crept into Bitcoin very early on, which is this idea about decentralization. We all know that crypto, the most important thing we say, is decentralization. And when we talk about decentralization, what do we mean by that? And I'm going to tell you that the word decentralization is the most misunderstood word in blockchain today. When we talk about decentralization in crypto, we mean it's unstoppable. You cannot manipulate it because it's decentralized. Government can't come in and mess with it. We think to ourselves, that is the most important thing about crypto. is decentralization, where it is unstoppable, unconfiscatable, permissionless, ungovernable, unregulated. These are all the words that people use, right, when we talk about decentralization. And we all in our mind think to ourselves, yes, that's what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a technology, a system that nobody can manipulate, nobody can control, nobody can govern. And when we've achieved that, we have now achieved this beautiful world where there is freedom in technology. But I'm going to tell you that that is one of the biggest things that is holding this whole industry back. Because there is no technology that can be ungovernable. If government doesn't like your technology, they will stop you. It doesn't matter how many nodes you have around the world. And by the way, nodes that don't mine are impotent. They cannot do anything. They are not making you more decentralized. But when you, and oftentimes people, and I've even heard it in this conference today, when they go to government, when they go to regulators and they're trying to now explain crypto to them, unfortunately, they cannot resist bringing this idea of decentralization in. And then they listen to them and they see the regulators, and the regulators are looking confused and they're shaking their heads and they're saying, what is this? We don't understand this. This doesn't make sense. And we think, from the blockchain advocate side, we think, they just don't understand. But the problem is they do understand. They know that any technology that they cannot govern, that they cannot regulate, that they cannot have oversight over, that cannot know who's making these payments, who's transacting, is there limits, are there controls? They are never going to allow it, no matter what technology you build. So if you have this crypto mindset, and I'm going to ask the organizers of this conference, if they want to be a force to drive this idea of blockchain into the mainstream, into the regulated mainstream, drop the word crypto, because that is the problem. No one is ever going to succeed if you are trying to build something. You know, there's this idea of DeFi. I'm sorry to tell you, but DeFi is a losing proposition. If you are thinking that DeFi is the answer to all these problems, you know, making things cheaper, making financial services accessible to everybody, decentralized finance is the opposite of that. Because all that's going to happen is you're going to get shut down and you will never succeed. Why? Because you need an accountable institution. You need key individuals in that organization. You need accountability. You need the ability to be able to give comfort to regulators that you have a finger on what's going on. And decentralized finance, by definition, is the opposite of what regulators want to hear. So drop this idea of crypto. It's not about uncontrollable. You know, when Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin, and by the way, BTC today is not the original Bitcoin that Satoshi created. When he created Bitcoin, the most amazing thing about Bitcoin is that it was built to be regulatory compliant. It was transparent. It was auditable. It was pseudonymous. You could link identities to the transactions. And it was traceable. All these things. And then, of course, a very important thing is mining. Why did Satoshi create mining? Is it so that we can have this enormous amount of computing power that nobody can hack, and this is the security that secures the network? Let me tell you what proof of work is all about. Why do we have to have all this electricity and these big miners come on board and start mining Bitcoin? Why did Satoshi Nakamoto create mining? So that those miners would grow large enough to become visible to law enforcement. And if they were doing double spending, or if they were processing transactions from money launderers or terrorists or something, law enforcement would be able to identify that miner and be able to go and knock on the door of the warehouse and arrest all the shareholders and the founders and the staff and confiscate all that equipment. So mining is a regulatory tool. In the Bitcoin white paper, it talks about honesty. What is honesty? You behave honest when you don't want to get into trouble. And mining, when they talk about honesty in the Bitcoin white paper, was that the miners wouldn't want to do anything illegal. They would want to behave honestly, because if they don't behave honestly, the sheriff is going to be knocking on the door and the people in that organization, that mining organization, are going to be arrested. So Satoshi Nakamoto built Bitcoin to be a regulatory compliant payment network. Now, I said to you before, if you are in crypto, I'm sure a lot of people over here are going to be uncomfortable with what I'm saying, because this is the opposite of what people talk about in crypto. They say, no, it's not about regulation. We want to skirt around the regulation. We don't want government to stick their finger in and start meddling with everything. This is what we have grown up with, right? If you are in crypto today, this is the messaging that you've been told. But way back in the early days, and this is where I come from the early days of Bitcoin, it was about creating peer-to-peer electronic cash that could reduce the cost of transactions globally and make the world a much better place by saving people money on transactions. But what has it become today? It's about crypto. It's about making money. It's about investing. It's about peer-to-peer trading. So the myth of decentralization, this idea that a decentralization is there to be unstoppable, is false. Decentralization is simple. It's to make a resilient network, a redundant network, so that if one part goes down, the other part can sustain itself. And then the other part of decentralization is in the title of the Bitcoin white paper, peer-to-peer electronic cash. In other words, where I can pay you a digital transaction without having to go through a central server to be able to verify that. You see, that's what decentralization was before. Bitcoin, and I'm talking about the original Bitcoin, not BTC, because BTC has changed Bitcoin to become more like crypto, Bitcoin is not crypto. Also, a multi-blockchain world. We have one internet. Why do we need multiple blockchains? Do you know that the original Bitcoin was built to be able to facilitate smart contracts? And more than that, did you know, not many people do, Bitcoin is Turing complete. In other words, if you're a developer, you understand that Bitcoin can be used for general computing. We don't need Solidity. We don't need Ethereum. We don't need any of this stuff. Bitcoin already had the capability in it. This idea of digital gold, I mean, come on. People think that having this digital asset that is useless, with no value whatsoever, somehow can be this valuable thing because it's scarce. You know, I was talking to a gentleman yesterday and saying, if you're a child, you can understand that something that is useless has no value. And just because it has a price doesn't make it gold. Another little issue is about this nodes. You know, if you have non-mining nodes, they are useless. They are not making your network more decentralized. So this idea of an internet protocol, a blockchain protocol that is stable, that facilitates interoperability. That's why the internet works. We can all interoperate with each other over the internet. That creates the network effect. The reason why platforms like Facebook and that are so successful is because everybody's on them. If we have a multiple blockchain world, what kind of network effect can you create? None. And of course, having a single blockchain creates efficiencies and optimizations. Now, the last thing I want to just mention about on this, the thing that's holding us back, is regulation. Now, regulators immediately, if you come to them and talk about DeFi and you talk about decentralization, you will never go anywhere. We are never going to make a blockchain world that can facilitate all these things if we keep talking about this. And it already is on what is BTC is not the original protocol because the chain doesn't give you servers, and it introduced anyone here next to it. It's totally the vision of Bitcoin. ESD. Lorien. Bitcoin was built for. It's transparent. It was crypto. Crypto means hidden. And encrypted. Did you know Bitcoin is not encrypted? It is transparent. You can see every transaction. You can see all the money that's moving around, and you can link them to addresses. And of course, regulatory compliant, transparent, immutable. The internet things are right man-made and traceable. This is what makes Bitcoin regulatory compliant. And of course, that enabling business model. So here you know now about just one two sides. Let's talk about my business. So Centbee has been around for about 7 years. I'm very proud to say we're going to be launching in the UK store, but a mobile money app that is like a social networking app. You can chat to your friends, you can send them money using ESN blockchain. We were chatting it the other day. If you want to send money to your friend on BNP
with Centbee because you 0.01 show for the transaction. Doesn't the promise of Bitcoin, digital cash, no cost. You can do global money transfer that allows you to send money to bank account, and assuming you have in Kenya where you can send it to peso accounts. Anywhere in the world, by the way, because it's BS, you can use Centbee anywhere in the world. And it also has a whole lot of shopping opportunities as well. So if you want to be able to use your digital cash inside Centbee, you're going to see in the next month or so that we're going to bundle a whole lot of local opinion retailers and brands where you can go and shop as well. So, and then of course the top up where you'll be able to do a top up in the Centbee wallet. So Centbee is a mobile money wallet based on BSC blockchain with a social element. If you've ever heard of WeChat, kind of like WeChat, but inherently global. All right, so check that out and check me out as well. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Getting a better understanding.